Hi guys, right now I'm going to give you a bit of a walkthrough on how to deliver a really good safety talk as a river guide. After 15 years of rafting, this is a tried and true formula that works very well for me. I understand there are differences in the way people give their safety talks, but I'm going to just talk you through a couple of things that I've found really useful throughout my rafting career. The first thing I generally do is help the guests suit up. I make sure that their life jackets and helmets are fitted correctly, and generally when I'm standing right in front of them, making sure their buckles and everything is appropriately fastened. It gives me a chance to talk to them and get an idea of their communication skills, whether they need any medication with them, asthma puffers, EpiPens, anything like that, and sort of work out the team and understand the dynamics, who's traveling with who. Once I feel that everyone's dressed appropriately, I then take them down to the boat. What I want to do is position them adequately in the raft for good weight and power. I don't want all the heavy people on one side. I don't want the boat to be unbalanced, and also take into consideration their communication skills. Everyone's going to be looking forward throughout the day, so I generally try and put the most competent people up the front. If those people sitting at the front don't speak English as their first language or have poor communication, everyone's going to be taking their cues from them throughout the day, so I generally try and put those people back. Once I've got people in the boat, generally they jump in and sit on the thwarts. Okay, so I ask everyone to sit on the outside. Then I go around and I show people where I want them to put their feet. I call it locking your feet in. In the middle, I get them to put 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, like this, okay? And I say, having your feet locked in is like wearing your seatbelt. Stops you getting ejected from the boat today. When people are sitting in that front compartment, 1 foot back, 1 foot by the seam line, and I get them to push their knees apart and brace themselves in the corner by spreading their legs there. Once people are sitting on the outside of the raft, I get them to put their paddle on their lap, and I talk to them about the importance of holding onto their T-grip. T-grips are really dangerous when they fly around the boat. They're really good at busting people's teeth and breaking noses. So I emphasize that it's really important to hold onto that part of the paddle today, and that everything we're going to do today involves the other hand, and that this one stays glued to the end of the paddle. Once people are locked in with their feet in the appropriate position, their paddle on their lap, I mentioned that this is the neutral position. This is how I want them to sit throughout the day. So once people are in that neutral position, the first thing I like to teach them is how to hold on. Okay, when I teach people to hold on, I get them to put their T-grip down between their legs, and then their arm goes over their paddle. And I emphasize that contains your paddle. It keeps it trapped there so it's not going to fly around. I mentioned that if they don't put their arm over the paddle, it might fly around the boat and whack their buddies. Alright. The last thing when I'm teaching people to hold on is that I always get them to lean into the raft. It's much better to fall in than fall out. People understand that very well. Once I've taught them to hold on, generally the next thing I'll teach them is how to get down inside the raft. When I yell get down, I tell people that I want them to put the balls of their feet and their T-grip down on the floor and keep a hand on the outside rope. That gives us a low center of gravity, less chance of the raft flipping over, less chance of them as an individual of falling out. Okay, sometimes there are inside lines, but I like people to hold the outside line. That way if we do flip over and they find themselves under the boat, it's easy to get out from underneath it if you already have a hand on that line. I then teach them how to get back up into their positions, and I generally say something like, everyone hop back up or back on the job. And that tells them to get back in that neutral position, paddle on their lap, holding their T-grip, feet locked in, ready to go. The next thing I'm going to teach people is how to shift their weight to the left and right of the boat. Generally, over left or over right are the two commands that I use. And I tell people, when it's time to move over left, keep your hand on your T-grip, slide your bum all the way across the tube, just leaving the paddle resting there. And if there's a thwart line on the boat, to hold onto that rope in the center. Okay. Then I get them back on the job, and then I do the same with over rights. Alright. Then talk to the team about paddling. And I emphasize the importance of working as a team and paddling together. So generally I get the two people in the front of the boat to paddle in time with each other, to watch each other, and everyone else in the raft is looking forward, so they take their cues from the people up the front. It's much easier for everyone to look forwards than it is to look back and try and keep time with the team. I tell them that there's two paddle commands, forward paddle and back paddle, and that they'll be able to tell how hard I want them to paddle by the tone of my voice. When they hear a little bit of anxiety in my voice, maybe it gets a little bit louder, that they should paddle a little bit harder. Once I've taught them the commands, forward paddle, back paddle, hold on, get down, over left and over right, The next thing I'm going to talk to them about is falling out of the raft. Okay, I tell people that if they fall out of the boat today, the best thing they can do is try and stay with the raft and hold on to the line running around the outside. I tell them that it's not important to hold on to their paddle, and if they lose it, that's no problem, but their first priority should be holding on to the boat. If they hold on to the boat, somebody on board will be able to rescue them. I then talk to the team about how to pull people back in by using the shoulder straps of the life jackets to hoist people in, and just pretty much tell them that, if you yank on someone's arm, that you might pop their shoulder out of the socket, so to use those handles. The next thing I talk about is rescuing people with a paddle. If people do fall out and they're in the water, then you can reach out using your paddle. And I tell them that it's like an extension of your arm, and to always offer that person the T-grip. The blade is not ideal for hanging on to. Give them the handle and you can use that to pull them back to the boat. I then say, if you fall out, you can't hold on to the boat, you can't be reached with a T-grip, then I might throw you a rope. And I talk about throw bags and rescue ropes, how they work, how to throw them, and how they need to respond if I do throw a rope to them. Okay, so everything is in sequence. Holding onto the boat, paddles, ropes. And then the last thing I talk about is if all three options fail and they're off floating down the river by themselves, then I discuss the whitewater float position. It is one of the most important things to talk about during a safety talk. And I basically say to them, I give them a demonstration. I say, I need you to get on your back, put your feet up, arms out, keep everything on the surface like a leaf on top. That way you float over things and not into things. Okay, always have your feet pointing downstream so you're looking where you're traveling, you can see where you're going, and if you come to rocks, you can push off rocks and defend yourself. Now there is the risk of foot entrapment, so I generally don't talk about that too much. I just say that if people have their feet down below the surface while they're moving in fast water, that they're going to smack rocks with their shins and they're going to take chunks out of their knees and their shins, and it's going to be very painful. That's generally enough of an incentive to remind them to keep them up off the bottom. I then talk about what to do if the raft flips over. I mentioned that if the boat does flip over, then I need them to come out from underneath it. That I'm going to climb on top and I want to count 5, 6 or 7 people depending on how big the team is. I want to get on top of that raft and make sure everyone's okay. And I tell people that if they're underneath the boat and I can't see them, then I'm going to start to panic. So not to hang out there if we do flip over. I do tell them that every flip is different and how we respond is going to be different. So once they're out from underneath the boat, ask them to keep a hold of the raft, keep their feet up, and listen for the next set of instructions, whatever they may be. At the conclusion of my safety talk, I like to retest all the commands that I've talked about at the beginning, and then I like to summarize it by saying what I consider to be the 5 most critical things. Okay, and I go over those 5 things. They are: number 1, keep your hand on the T-grip. Number 2, keep your feet locked in. Number 3, paddle together as a team. Number 4, rescue each other if people fall out of the boat. And number 5, getting into that whitewater float position. That's how I deliver a safety talk.